This is Conspirinormal.
Okay, guys, welcome to what we do every end of the year. Or actually, technically end of the year, but you guys will be hearing this at the beginning of 2021. We're doing the year in review.
And it was a very special year.
Yes, definitely one of the most eventful years in American history, and I'd say kind of an eventful year for us too, just like our own personal and level of Conspirinormal as well. So this is just something that we've done. I think the first one I did was in 2015. So every year we do kind of just like these just recap episodes of the episodes that we have done throughout the year. And we just kind of like briefly talk about them, any like remembrances that we have. And it kind of is a cool thing because we go back, you guys can go back and you guys can listen. If you're new to the show, you can go back and listen to all those old episodes. And I think from like episode 60 on, there's like a recap for just about every episode on these year in review shows that we've done. So you guys can check all those out in the Conspirinormal archives. But like I have said, it's been an extremely eventful year. So
yeah, I mean, we've got a lot we'll probably get to later, but I really feel like we took the show to the next level this year. And just looking through all these episodes, we just got some really great stuff. Hopefully, if you haven't checked it out, you can go back and check out some of these episodes, and this will inspire you to do so. But as with some other things in my life too, I just kind of I used the negative to turn it positive, and despite a lot of challenges, we really did a lot with the show this year. Solidified a lot of really, really great correspondences and relationships with people, and our fans, really building a sense of community. Pretty happy.
It's been different because of COVID, and because back in March, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get to it, but back in March we kind of had to stop doing the in-studio shows because of the quarantine, and then I was gone for a couple of months to Chattanooga, and then I came back, and then we still did the episodes away from each other. So from like March to September, we actually didn't do an in-studio episode until right before we were doing the Strange Realities conference, and I was staying over there with you. And then I've been back in Chattanooga now since the beginning of October. And so that we've been doing these episodes not traditionally the way that we have done. So it's been rather interesting, and it's kind of been a year of adjustment for us. We got used to doing, back when we were at Rob's and back when we started doing it at your place, got used to doing things face to face. So like I said, it's been a year of adjustment. So okay, so technically we started off this year with episode 295, which was our 2019 year in review. So we won't really talk too much about that. So really the first guest episode that we had was 296 with Jack Montgomery, American Shamans. And that was a show that I actually really looked forward to having Jack on. I met him the previous October when I was giving out the flyers, turned out useless flyers for the Strange Realities 2019, and met Jack there. And he's a real interesting guy. And of course we had him for Strange Realities 2020. In that episode we talked about kind of the American shamanic tradition and stuff like powwow, which is mainly what Jack what he practices. So we talked mainly about that, but we also talked a little bit about I think hoodoo as well, and some other things. And I think also the the Southern Granny tradition as well. Yeah, Appalachian Granny women. That's what it is. So that was an interesting show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the book
yeah.
was really inspirational, and it's been great getting to know Jack. He's just such a good guy. You can just tell he has a real deep spirituality, and he really cares about people, and has these connections with practitioners who have roots and traditions that go way back. So he's like a living repository of a lot of this information, and is a practitioner himself. So it's been great getting to know him, and he helped introduce us to Tony Cale, and kind of this was kind of the start of a lot of that. Well, I guess the show from 2019 about backwoods witchcraft really got us started on a lot of this these folk magic traditions, and
Jake Richards.
So that's been kind of a
yeah.
So that's been kind of a line of inquiry we've been having in some of these episodes.
Yeah, like he's and Jake Richards actually has a new book out, I believe. So we'll have to get him back on, I think. So this was kind of a common theme this year. Is kind of like I started getting really interested in this concept of folk magic back in like 2018 and 2019, and meeting Jack was kind of like serendipity, and having him on. We followed that up with episode 297, which was the Nox Mente Swapcast that we did with Jerry Ablan and his co-host Nish, which I believe that we talked to. Because what did we talked about a lot of stuff on that. There was a dream experience that I had that was kind of strange, and kind of the nature of consciousness, dark futurism, artificial intelligence.
Yeah, we got into some like weird cosmologies and personal experiences as well, which is usually, I think, the kind of the main focus of their show. We need to catch up with Jerry. I haven't talked to him in a little bit.
He came to the Strange Realities conference back in 2019 that we actually were able to do live up there in Nashville. It was episode 298. Our good friend Mark Anthony Wyatt. We talked about the first volume of his 2-volume set of The Spirit of Cornwall, which is called A Haunted Legacy. And this was
another guy from the 2019 Strange Realities.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, he was there. We talked about kind of like the different folklore and his own kind of personal experiences in the Cornwall area. And stuff like phantom surfers, ghost trains, UFOs, stuff like that. And also an encounter that Mark had with a really odd, mysteriously large owl, and kind of what he felt the significance of that encounter was. So, always enjoy having Mark on the show. He's a great storyteller, and I think people really love his accent as well. So,
he's really got a sense of that spirit of place in Cornwall, and enough to make 2 volumes with all these personal stories as well as more historical and folkloric stuff.
Followed that up with episode 299. This was Tobias Wayland, the Lake Michigan Mothman. This actually, we actually had to postpone that episode. I ended up doing that the next night. I think you had some family issues you had to deal with that night. And I actually ended up doing this one by myself. But Tobias is known for a book that he wrote called The Lake Michigan Mothman. And he has also had something called the Singular Fortean Society. So basically, this book was kind of like a compendium of all the different Mothman sightings that were seen in Lake Michigan area in Chicago, and that was collected by Lon Strickler of Phantoms and Monsters. So we kind of talked about kind of the different mundane kind of explanations possibly for this, but also some of the other things like stress in the environment, these type of things. I also talked to Tobias about that as well. So, which, if as you can tell, we kind of were going to kind of our first kind of big event of the for us this year, which was our 300th episode, which was a pretty big
we did
deal.
2 parts. One with some guests in the studio, and then one with a bunch of listener stories.
Yeah, and so what we did was we had Joe Kistner, who is a listener to the show and a patron, and he was talking about these, I guess, these like odd disappearances that happened around where he lives in Minnesota, and some of the interesting links between them. This is stuff that like no one, I don't think, really knows about very much. So it was kind of an interesting, like, whodunit story, and there was kind of like weird things about like a cult being involved and these type of things. And in the second part of that, first part of the episode, of the 300th episode, we also talked to our friend Joel and his friend Robbie, who he brought with him, about a shared UFO encounter they'd had like 2 years before, which was...
And that was cool because you had 2 witnesses who saw the same thing.
Yes. And so we had an idea for, because in the past, for like the 100th episode, the 200th episode, so like the 100th episode, I had like Micah Hanks, Dr. Future, a couple other people. I did like a whole bunch of different interviews with some other people. We actually split that one, I think, up into 2 parts. And then the 200th episode, which is actually kind of technically the first episode that you're on, Sergio, we did like this big party thing, and we had like Josh Cutchin in studio, Dr. Future, Randall Carlson, Joe Damari. We all hung out in Rob's backyard in his garage and did the recording there. But for the 300th episode, you and I kind of thought, well, we should do something different. And it's interesting that we did it the way that we did, because Zoom was about to be a really big thing in everybody's lives. And
right.
So we did like kind of like a round table, just like of listener stories. And we put it out that we wanted to talk to everybody, that we would give them the link to get onto Zoom. And we just did a whole big meeting with the various people. I think we had about 12 people at the most that night. But that was pretty good that we had a lot. And everybody kind of shared their own stories and all that. And that's actually, you can actually find that on the YouTube channel. That's actually...
The actual
video version of that, so you can actually just watch it. But
that was real fun. Like you said, it kind of foreshadowed things to come, and that was our first kind of hangout that we recorded, and those are increasingly going to become a big deal. So we will get to that a little later.
Yeah, stay tuned. So we followed that up, obviously, with episode 301, which was the first time we had Tony Kale on. This is in about mid-February. This was called Root Workers and Hoodoo in the Mid-South. This was specifically about hoodoo, and a book that he had written about hoodoo called Root Workers and Hoodoo in the Mid-South. Tony is extremely knowledgeable on this subject, and actually is in association with Jack Montgomery, working on a book. So I believe about the supernatural and about folk magic. So I would expect to probably see them come back to Conspirinormal sometime in 2021.
He's a Memphis resident, and the book has got a lot of really cool visual accompaniment, because Hoodoo did not shy away from commercialism. So there's a lot of great ads and different stuff you'd find in newspapers or magazines. It's a really, really good book, great coffee table book, and it's been nice getting to know Tony as well, and both him and Jack spoke together in a joint presentation in the Strange Realities 2020 conference.
February 23rd, episode 302. That's the day we posted it. AP Strange, Ashtar Transmissions, and Liminal Earth. AP Strange, otherwise known as Matthew Hopewell, his real name. He actually got in touch with me because he wanted to be a part of the 300th episode, and all his material that he had really was good enough for its own episode, so I put him on his own episode. And we basically talked about these Ashtar transmissions that were these weird interrupting transmissions in Britain sometime, I think about it like in the mid-70s. And we also talk about AP Strange's involvement with the Liminal Earth group, which we later had those guys on.
Right, and I did a recreation of the Ashtar broadcast for patrons.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You did.
Or you helped with that too.
Gosh.
Yeah, you supplied one of the disembodied voices.
Yes. You can get, if you're interested in hearing that, you can become a patron, and you can
you get that for $1.
It's funny looking back on some of these episodes because I feel like this was like 2 years ago.
I know, because this like 2020 was just so packed, and I think there's some time dilation too. You know, with the way just everything was in flux. Everyone was at home so much, so I kind of feel like it honestly might have, felt like it dragged more than usual.
Yeah, it's true. Episode 303, Seth Breedlove, first time we had him on. This is on the Trail of UFOs, which is a series that he has put up, I believe now on Amazon Prime, where he talks about making a documentary to reclaim the wonder and mystery involved with the UFOs instead of controversy. And we also talked about some of his about filmmaking, his techniques, how he kind of got involved with that, with the production company of Small Town Monsters. So we actually talked a little bit about paranormal, but in the beginning of that show, we kind of just talked about kind of like his influences and kind of his thoughts on what he did. And that was interesting too, because he was coming on Strange Familiars right after, and Tim actually pulled us in to be to come and be on the next show with him. So it was like kind of a weird crossover.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah,
and because we were already looking at doing Strange Realities 2020, not knowing what was coming down the pike or just ignoring it, and this was we were going to talk about Strange Realities that we were going to do live in Nashville, but of course that didn't happen. We actually did talk about that on Tim Renner's show. So, and
those Small Town Monsters movies are really some of the best in the field of like documentary style movies investigating different happenings.
Yes, very much so. Highly recommended. I think they're better than anything that is on TV. Just like normal television. I mean, it just kind of goes without saying. So the next episode, 304, Tim Banal and Aaron Gullius. We talked about, I called this B movies, flat earth conferences, and coronavirus fears. How little we knew at this point.
Was one other person supposed to be in that?
I don't think so. I think I just pulled them in. So this was interesting because the night before we actually recorded this episode, I dodged getting killed by a tornado by about 5 minutes, which was not the first tornado, which was only the first tornado I got to live through this year.
Yeah, we didn't get the locust. That's about it, but we got everything else.
Yeah. So I had no power. I went over to, you had power. You were fine there in Inglewood, but I went and got, I had nothing. So I ended up, of course we did the show at your place anyway. So it was good, but we talked about various different things, stuff from Golias's Saucer Life podcast that he had been talking about Reinhold Schmidt and Ron Ormond. And of course, we did talk about the Flat Earth Conference that Tim Banal attended as well. And Tim actually talked about that in the latest in Strange Realities 2020 that we ended up doing online. And we actually talked about the coronavirus and how alternative media and the government have responded to it. So
And it was still in China at that point, right?
Yeah, well, it was over here too, but it was just
it had
ignored.
started. Okay.
Yeah. So the next episode actually ended up being the first one that we had to do remotely. And
okay.
This was episode 305. This was Aaron O'Brien. And we talked about Return to Snakeland, and we pulled in our really good friend Phil, who, if you don't know Phil, he does most of the graphics for our show. He's the artist that does that. So good credit and kudos to him. Aaron talked about a graphic novel that he was involved in called Return to Snakeland, which was about these series of murders and suicides of teens that took place in Buffalo, New York. Yeah, Buffalo, New York in the mid 80s. This is actually stuff that you were actually aware of.
Yeah, I had a friend who's pretty influential in me getting into a lot of this weird stuff and some music stuff as well, but he was from Buffalo, and there was a metal band in Buffalo that mythologized a lot of this same stuff about like these abandoned industrial, I guess, was it like a mill or something? Obviously, you know, it's in the 80s, there's all this abandoned industrial stuff in these cities like Buffalo, and these metalhead kids would go and legend trip in these spaces and leave satanic graffiti, and there was all this kind of, you know, this was at the height of the satanic panic also, and then there's actual murder. So this metal band mythologized all that in a lot of their music and stuff, so I was aware of a lot of this stuff already.
And we also talked to Phil. We made it kind of like a comics or like graphic novel show. They're probably like, I think this is like the last 20-25 minutes of that episode.
And his comic is called Those Shadow People, and has a lot of weird stuff and paranormal elements to it as well.
Mm-hmm. And you guys can check both those out. You can go to both their website. Everything on every episode, if you go to iTunes or wherever you go to find the show notes, you'll see all this stuff, everybody's stuff linked up. And
that's cool, because there's a lot of people who are interested in this stuff who are also, you know, big into sci-fi and comics and other cultures like that. So we want to try to get some crossover going with that.
Next episode was episode 306. This was Jenny Ashford and Tom Ross, number 5. I titled this one 13 O'Clock Out of Control. And it usually always has an explicit warning on it. I don't remember too much about this one other than we talked about like serial killers, kind of the stuff that they talk about on their episode. And I wrote something about goat testicle grafting. Which, you know, you guys could go check that out. That was always an interesting show. And we've had them on several times, but that only once this year, and I need to get them back on at some point.
Only once this year?
Only once this year that we've actually had them on. Jenny was involved with Strange Realities.
Yeah, that's what makes it seem like that. Okay, because we usually have them on a few times.
Angelia Shear was next, episode 307. Angelia, great lady. She is the head of Tennessee MUFON here in our state. And we talked about her book that she came out with, which is a great book called UFO Encounters: How High Strange Events Transform Human Perception. And basically, this was about the cases that she has investigated over the last few years, probably really over the last 25 or so years, because she's been doing this for quite a while, and kind of like the implications and the about high strangeness, missing time, weird occurrences, all these stuff, and also talked about one of the most fascinating cases that I've actually ever heard, which was really interesting. You guys can check that out. That's episode 307.
And I think she is also, she's a great lady, and the book was very interesting. She really came to a lot of those conclusions through field work, which is really cool about the book. But she is recovering from some health issues right now, so we just want everybody to wish her the best as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Now, episodes 308 and 309 were actually, we actually split into two.
It had to be.
This was Alan Greenfield 2. We called them the Gospel of Greenfield. We actually had Rin join us, and gosh, I mean, what did we talk about on this?
Well, I think the point was, we wanted to get away from just the secret cipher of the Ufonauts and get into his background and occultism and radical politics and all the associated weirdness. So, of course, as usual with Greenfield, it was a lengthy conversation, and we had to split it up into two.
Yeah, the first episode is an hour and 51 minutes, and the second episode is an hour and 16 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was about that time that I actually was here in Chattanooga, and not as close this time, but I got to live through another tornado.
So this is already when the outbreak was really spreading.
So this is the quarantine time. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we had recorded the show before that, and because of that, we started getting on this 2-week behind schedule. Because we split that show up. This was followed by episode 310, Kiki Dombrowski, Witch's Wheel of the Year and Divination Methods. This was an episode about like I said, the Witch's Wheel of the Year, and the different holidays that are on that wheel. And we talked about some of the lesser known holidays that people may not have heard of. And this was based off of a book that she did called 8 Extraordinary Days. Kiki she's a tarot reader. She's a witchcraft practitioner. She is also involved with Liminal Earth. And we came to her on her radar because we actually read one of her experiences from Nashville on the air. I think on the AP Strange episode.
Yeah, and that was just in my neighborhood too, I think.
Yeah. I think it's
that experience.
I think it was pretty close. Yeah. Kiki's great.
Yeah, it's been great to start the correspondence with her, and she became involved with Strange Realities as well, and has become a good friend of the show.
So, starting off in April, episode 311, this was Mark Anthony Wyatt. This was the fourth time we've had Mark on. This is called The Spirit of Cornwall, Volume 2. This was about, the second volume of the book, The Spirit of Cornwall series. And talked about some weird sea monsters, wizard charlatans, and something called the knockers, which are these creatures that live in mines that knock around. And there's tales that also surround Aleister Crowley, his stay in Cornwall, and a weird murder case that's kind of tied up into all that. That's what we talked about on that episode.
Yeah, just a continuation of the first book. Really cool folk tales and up-to-date experiences.
So episode 312. This was the second time, but the first time in nearly 2 years and we've had him on a lot since. Our good friend Recluse, also known as Stephen Snyder. We talked about his book, Strange Tales of the Parapolitical.
Yeah, we've really been building with Recluse.
Yeah, we absolutely have.
It's been pretty cool.
Once again, another person that has was also involved with Strange Realities this year, the online version.
And I think this is when he had this prolific blog for a long time. You can go back. I don't even know how long it stretches. Mm-hmm. But around this time when he's started doing the farm podcast too, I think he's really coming out of his shell, because he was really a recluse.
Yeah.
And he was into so much, exposing so much weird stuff. I think he kind of had some reservations about being public with everything, but it's been cool to see him really come out of his shell, and it's been cool to build with him. Yeah,
he started doing the farm, and he kind of took it over from Frank Zero, and he's like the full-time host now. And that show is excellent, by the way. If you guys enjoy us, I think you will really like the farm. But his book is called Strange Tales of the Parapolitical, Post-War Nazis, Mercenaries, and Other Secret History. We talked about Operation Gladio, those type of things, private military companies like Blackwater, and their influence. And that was a really, really interesting book and a really, really interesting interview with him. You guys can check that out. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that was just it's a great book about the what he would call the right side of the pyramid.
Yes.
And a lot of things that in our contemporary mutations of conspiracy culture really kind of ignored. So it's definitely a good source of information. I'm glad to see his blog entries get put into book forms, things that hopefully will get out there to more people.
This was followed up by episode 313, which we titled Music and Magic. I think we wanted to do a series of these. Hopefully we'll come back to it at some point. This one, actually, Rob joined in with us.
Just like old times.
Just like old times, yeah. And also Joel, who you guys have heard on the show before. I have listed here Joel the Phantom Farmer and his bandmate and great-grandson, which you guys have probably heard some of their music on our Patreon, called Chris Lord Bird. So this was kind of like your idea. What was kind of like some of the stuff that we talked about in this? Music of the spheres and stuff like that?
Yeah, I just wanted to get some kind of Nashville people together, because really the lifestyle around here revolves around music so much, and explore these more esoteric and paranormal elements of music. We kind of stayed on broader topics and a lot of history and stuff like that, not really too much into popular music. So yeah, that was the inspiration behind that.
Yeah, we need to come back and do like a music conspiracy show or something like that.
Yeah, that's the plan.
So, episode 314, Dr. Future joined us in the middle of the year. And this was actually because he put his book out called Two Masters and Two Gospels. We actually labeled this as part 2 because in the end of the year episode for 2019, you guys can hear him talk about some of it as well. But this was his book is called Two Masters and Two Gospels, Volume 1, The Teaching of Jesus versus the Leaven of the Pharisees in Talk Radio and Cable News. So there's a lot that we talked about on this episode. Every time we have Mike on, it's usually probably around at least a 2+ hour show.
Yeah.
As you guys have just heard. So we kind of talk about who were the men that kind of inspired the ideology that kind of really permeates the mainstream evangelical Christianity now. and also
Going way back.
Going way back to stuff going back to like the 1920s and the 1930s.
Yeah.
And kind of what Mike's kind of conclusions about it is.
It's basically that big business bought the church, and it was an organized effort. What we know of now as conservative evangelicism was largely, maybe the political aspects of it were largely engineered by big business. And there's he provides extensive documentation for this.
Yep.
It is not just hearsay or speculation. Yeah, it was fascinating. Really big, dense book.
So episode 315, this is actually right at this point is when we switched over to Red Circle, which is the server, the posting company that we are on now. This was John Chadwick on Ley Lines and Spirit Roads.
Yeah, this was pretty cool. I haven't talked to John in a little bit. I need to talk to him again. This is real fun. I wanted to kind of get into the meat of some of these mystical earth mysteries ideas that seem really vague, and things like ley lines or places of power and mounds and things like this, and go back in history to where a lot of these ideas came from. And many of the ideas, of course, come from the British Isles, and not from necessarily too far back. Mostly just from the late 19th century onward. And so it was cool to explore all that with John. He's of course in the UK, and just really wanted to kind of get to where a lot of these ideas come from, because they are hopelessly vague in a lot of their current New Age context.
Yeah, and you also talked about the sites in North America.
Yeah, because these same kind of things. Ideas about sites, creating astronomical alignments on the ground. The idea of spirit roads are also in Native American cultures. So, a lot of these are real universal concepts you'll find across the world, but the articulation of them in the UK really influenced a lot of our modern day popular conceptions of them.
So episode 316 and 317 we actually recorded on the same day. This is Joshua Cutchin and Timothy Renner, Where the Footprints End, Volume 1.
Long anticipated book.
Yes, which we are soon in the next few weeks going to at least have one of the guys on about Volume 2, which just released. Now this is Where the Footprints End, High Strangeness and the Bigfoot Phenomenon, Volume 1, Folklore. And as the title suggests, this is kind of like how Bigfoot is similar to the folklore that surrounds fairies, aliens, ghosts, and even things like witches. And we talked a little bit about the women in white phenomenon that Tim has kind of seen that has happened in a lot of Bigfoot encounters as well. So this was a really excellent book.
Some of the most interesting Bigfoot stuff I've come across, period. Their perspective is really, really important, I think, and big missing puzzle piece.
Yes, absolutely.
And of course, two of the best friends of Conspirinormal.
Yes, they are. They've been involved. They were involved in both Strange Realities conferences so far. 317. This is Carl Abrahamson and Vanessa Sinclair, and this is called Into the Devil's Den, is what I entitled it. And we've actually had Carl on just recently, and this is about his documentary film called Into the Devil's Den, which is about Anton LaVey.
But then we also talked a lot about his book of culture as well.
Yes. And we talked to Vanessa Sinclair, which is Carl's wife. We talked about some of her work that involves kind of combining the techniques of the occult with psychoanalysis.
Yeah, they're like a super cool magical power couple.
Yes, they are.
It was a great discussion, and we've really enjoyed getting to know them, and following up with Carl in that latest episode, or I mean second to latest episode. But yeah, this was really cool, and I considered it a pretty big guest for the show, because he's pretty well known, and especially that book of culture was pretty influential.
Yes. We followed that up with episode 318. I was back in Nashville at this point. This was with Chris Ernst, The Hill and the Hole. And we were actually also involved was Tim Banal on this episode.
Because he had a cameo in the film.
Yes. He was part of the film, and we talked about two movies that he did, which was The Hill and the Hole, and another movie called Corpse. And we kind of talked about like synchromysticism, secret societies, Lovecraftian horror, all type of things like that.
Yeah, it was cool. It's been really great getting to know Chris also. He's a really cool guy.
Uh-huh.
And this movie, I mean, if you haven't seen it, you really need to go check it out. If you're into any of this stuff and Fortiana, it's got a lot of the mythos of it all wrapped up. You know, you'll recognize a lot of things. It's a really great movie, really well done. And it's got Tim Banal and Adam Gorightly in it. Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite recent movies.
Yeah, Tim Banal plays I think he's like a hamburger chef.
He's the fry cook.
He's the fry cook. Yeah, that's right.
Hasn't quite made it to the hamburgers yet, you know.
Yes. 319. This was our good friend John E.L. Tenney. This is the third time we've had John on. This was about his book, Theoretical Weirdo, Mishmash of Ramblings About Weirdness. We talked about how he kind of perceives this new book as an experiment and some of his ideas about writing it. And this was one we started getting into. We also talked a little bit about kind of like, you know, the paranormal and conspiracy theory worlds, and how a lot of it kind of comes from a right-wing kind of bent to it. We started getting into that as well. And this was about the time that we were starting to promote the online conference. This is about the time we really decided that we were going to go ahead and do this thing online. So yeah, it's a couple of weeks, I think, before that. Because right before that, I had posted a 6-minute clip. The Strange Realities Conference 2020 is now online. That was in early June. So, episode 320, David Metcalf. Second time we've had David on, because we had him on in 2019, and we've had David on a few times since then. We called this Gas Station Grimoires and the Evangelical Fringe, is what I called it. And this was kind of a little bit of a preview for what he was going to talk about at our conference. And he calls the gas station and grocery store grimoires. Like they're like Christian themed self-help books, but there's like weird kind of demonology stuff in there, stuff that borrows from like New Age and occult worlds, basically.
Yeah, and that's kind of in the broader context of this second apostolic Reformation world of these new mutations of charismatic Christianity that he's really deep into exploring.
Right. And this also we talked a lot about on this episode. We talked a lot about how charismatic Christianity itself really kind of derives a lot of the practices from the occult and from New Thought, and what that might mean, and how this kind of stuff is like really mishmashed together in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and then the Gas Station Grimoires is real cool because he's just showing that there are really accessible forms of folk magic in the marketplace, and that unbeknownst to many people, there are magic paraphernalia at almost every gas station and Walmart.
This was followed up by 321, Caroline Corey. We talked about her documentary Superhuman, which is about like psychic powers, psi abilities, and how she herself and others have kind of trained and honed those same abilities over time. And kind of like also the cutting edge research that has been done to order to kind of like improve these abilities. So she talked to like Dean Radin and several other people. Really interesting documentary. I highly recommend it as well too. So 322, Gerard Williams. This is the second time I had Gerard on. The first time I had him on was way back in 2014. This was called The Spider's Web, and this is actually a forthcoming book project that he is working on that's kind of about how the Nazi apparatus really survived after the Second World War, and how some of the United States intelligence agencies kind of helped to assist them as well.
Right, that definitely crosses over with some of Recluse's stuff.
Right, exactly. And also we kind of talked about the hidden history and how that's really kind of affected us today. What is still going on? What are the repercussions of this? And Gerard is he's a wealth of knowledge. He really knows what he's talking about. And he is really good at, he's also been a journalist, and the guy's had some amazing personal like experiences being a journalist. It's crazy. I'd love to talk to him about it, but he won't talk about it. Episode 323. This one I know you were really excited about. This is Dr. Stephen Finley, UFOs and the Nation of Islam.
Yeah. He really explored the role of UFOs in the mythos of the Nation of Islam, experiences of Elijah Muhammad and Farrakhan, as well as we kind of in general talked a lot about some of these African American new religious movements of the early 20th century and some of the mystique around their origins. And this I was really looking forward to this. Saw him I saw him posting on Radio Mysterioso, and I think he did the show with Greg first. And I was really inspired because I'm really interested in new religious movements, and especially a lot of the African American ones are really not as well known, and it's not as well known that there are these UFO aspects to them. So that was really, really cool to get a different perspective and a wider perspective on some of the stuff.
Yes, no doubt. That was a really fascinating episode. And we kind of talked also about kind of like African American UFO experiences that are not as widely reported.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Yeah.
And kind of in general, what are the different dimensions of the UFO experience as experienced by African Americans, and how it differs from other people.
This was followed up by 324, which was our Leah Haley Roundtable with Aaron Gullius, Greg Bishop, and Jack Brewer. This one, we talked about Leah Haley, who was I guess, UFO or abductee that later believed that she was actually part of a mind control program.
Right.
Pulled in Aaron because he had just done a couple of episodes on Saucer Life, one about Cito's New Friends, which was a book that she wrote, which is a children's book about aliens that she wrote, and also did just one that was just on her. And Jack Brewer, because Jack has actually spoken to Leah Haley. He's actually interviewed her, and
I think Greg had met her too, right?
Yeah, he had met her as well. So we pulled him in as well, and just kind of talk about how, like, what was the involvement of intelligence agencies in this woman's experience, like what exactly had happened.
Which that's really interesting chicken and the egg kind of stuff that, not only it points out the some of the problems with hypnotism and repressed or recovered memories that you find in other things like satanic ritual abuse. But it was real fascinating. We did not know, we didn't realize until then that when I was doing research around this, that we had actually been walking down the beach pretty close to where one of her experiences supposedly happened. Yeah.
Eglin Air Force Base. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we went there in the beginning of 2019. My stepson wanted to go to he wanted to go to Florida. You tagged along with us, and we walked along that same beach that she had her experiences too, and we had no clue. On the next episode, 325, Brent Raines returned to the show. This is kind of where we're starting to kind of like promote the conference, talking to everybody that was in it. He actually pulled in a friend of his named Dr. Robert Davis, and who had been involved with the Free Study, which was part of a study on alien contact and the kind of the similarities to the near-death experiences, and what exactly that meant, and their kind of the implications of it, which if you ever have a chance to see anything about that, it's extremely interesting.
Yeah, we really focused on like the transformative nature and the similarities to the psychedelic experience as well.
Right.
So it was pretty cool. I think he was a neuroscientist, right?
Yes. Yeah. Dr. Davis. Yeah. I believe he's a neuroscience. Yeah. So he was, that was an interesting episode. We also talked about some of like the Native American sides and some of the other things that, experiences that, Brent has had. 326. This was the third time we had Recluse on. We had Recluse on a lot this year. Yeah. Down on the farm is what I called this. And this was kind of a more, just a grab bag of topics, stuff that, because I was listening to his show a lot at this point, but we talked about like the Council of National Policy, again about the private mercenary armies, the idea of fourth generation psychological warfare, and again, the right side of the conspiracy pyramid, as we like to say, and
This is also in the context of the election stuff really starting to heat up, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we recorded this in late July and posted it at the beginning of August. So yeah, this was right as that was starting to happen as well.
And the pandemic simultaneously, and how that was interacting, and yeah, that was
Yep. 327. This was Jeremy Puma and Garrett Kelly from Liminal Earth. We finally got to have the guys responsible for Liminal Earth on the show.
Yeah, we'd had two of their representatives before, right?
Yep. AP Strange and Kiki. And we talked to these guys about their interactive map that they had, and that's dedicated to the world of the paranormal, high strangeness, and the just plain curious, as I wrote here. And they also talk about kind of like their own kind of personal experiences. And there was one experience that they had where they talked about a guy that they felt was a time traveler, or a couple that were time travelers, that one of these guys, I can't remember which one, that they saw. And we talked about their mascot that they call Shrimpy and where that comes from.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. It was great to connect with them, and just always encourage people to contribute to Liminal Earth, and make that something that is a go-to and a resource for connecting and checking out other people's experiences on a map.
328, Olap Phillips. Second time I'd had him on. Again, a guest that returned from 2014 all the way back. We talked about the secret cipher and the idea of weaponized conspiracy theory.
Conspiracy OG.
Yeah. Of course, Olaf is the editor of Paranoia magazine, which is, I guess, a conspiracy zine that goes way, way back, right?
Yeah, he really gives the context of his journey into some of these alternative cultures, and a lot of the same things we've been observing with where it has gone and where it has gone wrong, and how it has been weaponized and popularized, and become pretty dangerous. So it's cool to get someone who's a veteran of that world, really tell his story. And then he's the second one who published Secret Cipher of the Ufonauts, right?
Yeah. He republished Secret Cipher of the Ufonauts.
So he talked about his relationship with Greenfield, and he has gotten really interested in both the Cipher of the Ufonauts and other ones, and using them as kind of divinatory tools. So he's kind of shared a lot of that journey with us too.
329. Nathan Isaac, Kyle Cadell, and Darian West from the Penny Royal crew.
Those crazy Kentucky boys.
Yeah, check this shit out, man. It's that one. I think you guys heard about 1 hour and 44 minutes of a total 4-hour conversation.
Yeah.
We'd actually got not one but 2 Patreon episodes out of this because we just talked about just so damn much.
Yeah. That's cool.
Penny Royal podcast did not actually come out till a couple of months later.
Yeah, but I think that was the best preview so far that was anywhere.
Yeah. And we kind of talked about basically the weirdness that kind of surrounds their hometown of Somerset, Kentucky. And what they think it is, what it might mean, things like strange murders, worship of ancient gods, weird synchronicities, all kinds of just strange shit and weirdness.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That goes on. So we
and now you can check that. You can check out their podcast.
Yep. You can check that shit out, man.
Check that shit out.
Episode 330. We called this UFO Memory Lane. We had on Timothy Beckley, Alan Greenfield, and Brent Rains. I would have loved to have all 3 of them at the same time, especially Beckley and Greenfield. Right. But we had, I guess Greenfield forgot, or he came in later and had technical issues or something like that. But we did get to talk to Tim Beckley, told us some interesting stories from the time that he was really involved in UFO research, as well as when Greenfield joined us too. We talked about Gray Barker, some of his involvement, his recollections about Gray Barker, and then we got into some weird occult stuff as well with him. So,
yeah, and all three of these guys are just triple OGs. I think most of them corresponded with each other too, even back in the days of these youth UFO enthusiast clubs,
right? That
were using those. I guess what magazines were they using? Some of these pulp mags.
Yep.
Yeah, to communicate. So right. I mean, it's
classified ads too. I think is what they would do as well.
Yeah. So that was just an amazing history of the UFO culture. I mean, from 3 people who grew up in it and continued interest in it throughout their lives.
So 331, 332, and 333, and are actually, then there's a 333.5. We did pretty extensive interviews on this for our Strange Realities conference. So I'll just kind of briefly run down here what we did. 331, the first part of that, we talked to Greg Bishop, Red Pill Junkie, and David Metcalf. And the second part, we talked to John Tinney, Aaron Gullius, and Tim Banal. And you guys can actually, we did those first as live videos on YouTube and on our Facebook page. You guys can actually find that on either the Conspirinormal Facebook page or on our Conspirinormal YouTube, Conspirinormal podcast. And then for 332, On that episode, we got the first hour, Kiki Dombrowski, Stephanie Quick, and Jenny Ashford. And then we did the second hour, Soraya Askath, of course, from famous Where Did the Road Go? Joshua Cutchin and Timothy Renner as well. So that was episode 332. 333 was, we talked to Reverend Michael Carter, about the UFOs and his contact experience. And also we talked to Guy Malone. I wanted to try to get those guys all together, but we didn't manage to do that. And then we also talked to Tony Cale, Jack Montgomery, and David Metcalf joined us again on that one. And then there was a 33.5 where again we had David Metcalf and then Ren, Collier, Dr. Future, and Recluse. So we managed to give everybody a nice preview of the Strange Realities conference.
Yeah. And then the conference, when did the conference happen in relation to that last one there?
So we posted that episode on September 23rd.
Okay.
And then we did the conference on the 25th is when we started. And in the middle of all that, we actually managed to record an episode, which was with Dave Altman, Micah Hanks, who showed up out of nowhere, and Terry Carter. So we talked to the first time we'd had Dave on, we talked about the UAP expedition group, the unidentified aerial phenomenon, and it's kind of like some of the sightings. And then we talked to Terry about looking for strange objects in the American West and some of the weirdest hoaxes he had encountered. And Micah also joined us as well to talk about that. 335, moving on. Robert Guffey, the conspiracy theory that's eating America. We're in early October now. This was probably one of my favorite interviews that we've done. We based this off a series of articles that Robert had done for, was it Salon?
Yeah.
Yeah. About QAnon and about the QAnon conspiracy theory. And how it's becoming in danger of becoming like its own kind of religion and becoming like a cult now. This was probably, I think, one of the most serious episodes that we've probably done.
It's very timely, and it continued a lot of the stuff we've been experiencing throughout the year when, even though, like we talked about before, conspiracy theory has been increasingly weaponized. I think this year really it hit a critical mass with the pandemic and with the election, and the QAnon conspiracy became kind of mainstreamed, and there were very mainstream politicians promoting it. And yeah, I mean, only someone like, we talked about, we've been speaking to these OGs of conspiracy theory and talking about how it's changed and how their perspective can provide some context to what's going on now. Only someone like him, who's been in this stuff so long, wrote a great book called Cryptoscatology about conspiracy. Only someone like him could write this and kind of provide the context, because when you're into this stuff, if you have any sense, you are also studying the sociological and anthropological aspects of it as well. So someone like him is able to really provide context for, quote, normal people to understand where these kind of ideas come from and how they might be exploited.
So 336, this was Paul Heineck, which was an absolute pleasure to speak with. Of course, the son of J. Allen Hynek, probably one of the most famous UFO researchers. But we kind of talked a little bit about like his relationship with his dad, but we also kind of talked about how his work kind of like in special effects and in virtual reality. We ended up talking about DMT and some of his experiences with that too.
Medicine, and he's really involved in life extension.
Real interesting. And then Dave Altman joined us again for that, and also Red Pill Junkie joined us for that as well. So 337. This was your cool idea. This was the Conspirinormal 2020 Halloween special, which we actually have a video of on our YouTube channel. You guys can go check that out. So we did this, I think, in 2 parts, right? We talked to David Metcalf and Dr. Future. Timothy Renner joined us later on to talk about his new apparitions book, which is illustrations that he has done. But we talked mostly about shock theater and shock theater hosts of the past. And
and I would really encourage anyone to check out the YouTube version, because David provides a lot of great
as well did
accompaniment.
Kiki in her part too, where she talked about kind of the pagan origins of Halloween and the traditions that she finds interesting and fun, and then also kind of like connections to like the Fae and that mythology too. So that was we actually spent, I think we recorded that over like a couple of weeks, because it looks like I put down recorded October 13th and the 20th. So that's like nearly 3 hours long. Which we followed that up by episode 338, which was Jose Herrera, Psi and Mimetic Warfare.
This was kind of a continuation of some of the stuff we're talking about with Robert Guffey and Olaf Phillips and Recluse also, and Dr. Future. And he is a former Marine who is, I think he's working on his master's right now. And
he's actually a student of Diana Pasuka, right?
Right. And he's, using his military experience to try to map out how ideas and memes get spread, and how, information has been weaponized, and how we can understand this information environment we're in, in that kind of context. And then also he really got into his personal Psi experiences in the theater of war, and that was really interesting to hear someone talk about how much Psi plays a part in warfare.
Yeah, we talked about the Russian troll farm, and then kind of like what mimetic warfare actually is, and how that really did influence the 2016 election. And he actually provided us with a lot of different materials that were pretty interesting as well, like the Senate reports and stuff.
The security establishment is really, feels like they're behind and trying to grapple with this new, with this new paradigm.
This is 339. This is Heather Mosier and Steve Stockton, Monster Madness. I actually ended up doing this one myself. Zuri, who is the head of the Monster Madness channel, was not able to do it because of school, but Heather Mosier, who's a part of that, and Steve Stockton, and I actually wrote a script for one of their episodes about the Dover Demon. But we kind of talked a little. We got into started talking about the Dover Demon, Tennessee Wildman, Navi, Skinwalkers, all these different kind of cryptid creatures, and then we ended up talking about the Bell Witch a little bit too, which kind of set us on a little bit of a rabbit hole with the Bell Witch, which you guys can hear on the Patreon episode. But we later, Heather actually joined us later on, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Do you have any thoughts on that one? I know you heard it, so.
Oh, it was cool. It's really great to hear, everyone likes to hear Steve Stockton tell stories, and Heather Mosier's research is really good around these stories.
She's quite knowledgeable. We followed this with 340, Richard Spence, Secret Societies and the Golden Age of Fraternalism. This again, I think, was one of my favorite episodes that we've done. This, we talked a lot about the kind of the fine line between the secret societies and intelligence agencies, kind of like a chicken and egg thing. and also the idea of the golden age of fraternalism, which was something from the late 19th, early 20th centuries. Groups like the KKK and the Shriners, how this influenced conspiracy theory research. There's a lot in this interview. So any thoughts on that one?
I've been wanting to talk to Richard Spence for a long time. I'm glad we can start some kind of communication, because he's just has a wealth of knowledge on this stuff, and he is a doctor and an academic who studies the reality of secret societies and particular conspiracies. So that's refreshing. It's not just another person with a YouTube channel or something like that. I mean, this is real, verified stuff.
All right, so 341, Recluse joined us again, third time this year. Actually, maybe fourth time this year, but we talked to him about his new book, which is A Special Relationship. This is A Special Relationship, Trump, Epstein, and the Secret History of the Anglo-American Establishment. This is only book one. There's going to be a second book and a third. So we kind of talked to him about the Anglo-American relationship during the Cold War era, specifically talking about the Profumo affair in Britain in the early 60s, kind of like this whole milieu of honeypot operations, sex parties, strange murders, odd kind of things that were going on, and I put in here, in other words, all the juicy stuff. So your thoughts on that one?
I had told you before that I always wondered why that Dead Kennedys song was called Kinky Sex Makes the World Go Round, and it's got we talked about it before, but just real quick, it's a some kind of guy from the State Department calling Margaret Thatcher and talking about how we need to start another war and all this kind of stuff in the 80s, Reagan, Thatcher, Cold War context. But so it seemed like why they name it this, I thought it was just funny. I mean, obviously they got a great sense of humor. But this really puts it into perspective as far as the how many of these weird sex rings were a part of the Anglo-American security establishment.
Yeah, very much so, and I think it's something that still continues. 342, Eric Davis, High Weirdness in the Conspiracy Chapel Perilous is what I called that. Now, this I thought was a fantastic one as well. Yeah,
another great one. Another real high profile author and intellectual, really cut his teeth in music journalism and the whole early 90s utopian Silicon Valley kind of culture, psychedelics, and again, continuing kind of the same stuff of how what we're going through now, this weaponization of conspiracy theory, but he takes it a step further and really sees it in this high weirdness concept, and in almost like a spiritual dimension of what's happening to the population that's being inundated with all this, all these alternative realities.
Yes. Yeah, we talked about the kind of like his book that's about Terence McKenna, or the McKenna brothers, and Robert Anton Wilson, Philip K. Dick, and how it's all kind of like influences the counterculture as well. So, and then kind of talk about how people that, because of the pandemic, one of his big things that he's looked at is people becoming more and more like going to their own kind of chapel perilous that that Robert Anton Wilson described.
Real great show, and I'm really proud of that. Just looking through all these people we talked to this year, it's crazy. We've got some really high profile people, but not the people from more I hate to say it, but like more respectable worlds, not like not your usual like high profile paranormal conspiracy circuit people, but like a little more public intellectuals and academics and things like that. So I'm pretty proud of this year.
Yeah, same here. I am as well. 343, Laird Scranton, Primal Wisdom of the Ancients. Laird also was someone that I had on a while back. This was from his latest book, which is called Primal Wisdom of the Ancients, A Cosmological Plan for Humanity. We talked about kind of like the idea of cosmology, what exactly that means, how the different cultures, how they're similar. And also kind of like how his big thing is the Dogon tribe, which is in northern Africa, and some of their like esoteric traditions, what that says about cosmology, and how he thinks there's a civilizing plan from an ancient civilization, or possibly some kind of spiritual force. And the idea of like non-material, yeah. There's a lot.
Big cosmology, ancient history. Yeah.
344, Seth Breedlove and Heather Mosier joined us. This was the Mark of the Bell Witch. You actually sat this one out because you had COVID.
Yeah.
So, which actually the next episode we actually recorded before this episode. We did it all the same day. And you were you hung in there for the first episode, which is like, major kudos to you. But this we talked about the now released Mark of the Bell Witch film, and we had Heather on because she had done the research for the film as well, and we kind of talked about kind of like the folkloric aspects of the Bell Witch legend, how we kind of felt, what we could what truths we could get from the Bell Witch legend. I actually talked to them a little bit about the possibility of Freemasonry being a part of the Bell Witch legend. So, and what they thought about that. And we actually did a Patreon episode with David Metcalf about that very subject.
Yeah.
As well. So you guys can check that out too. Episode 345, coming in for a landing here. Carl Abrahamson 2, The Devil's Footprint. This is, we talked to Carl about his latest novel, The Devil's Footprint, which is a satirical novel, but we kind of got really deep and kind of philosophical on this episode as well.
Yeah, we continued a lot of things we've been exploring this year, and the basis of the book is that the world is so corrupt that God has to use the devil to solve our collective problems, which is really, really interesting. And it is very ironic, as we're going to see with the last person we had in the year, how many similarities these two last shows. It was great to have Carl back on. And we talked about Fenris Wolf 10 also, which is the latest volume of his book, or kind of like a journal style book of collection of articles by various thinkers, and all kinds of cool magical and historical ideas in there. So we really enjoyed that too. But
that's like really great philosophical discussion that we had about the idea of like community and individualism and the relationship between the two, and how not necessarily how being an individual means that you have to completely reject society. I thought that there were some good lessons, and actually some good thoughts in that episode.
Yeah.
So 346, last episode of the year, Dr. Future 10, called this Pandemic Profiteering and the End of 2020. Of course, this is the latest episode. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard this. But basically, we talked about Mike's research into hydroxychloroquine, where it comes from, why it was being promoted as much as it was. And then we managed to get to talk about how we felt about the conspiracy world and some of the disinformation and the falsehoods that are being spread, and how it's really hurting us at this moment. So that is, any thoughts about that before I move on, or we move on?
Well, just that we ended the year with a guy who is well known for his relationship and documentation of that relationship with Anton LaVey. And then Dr. Future, who is, one of my favorite Jesus people. So it's ironic how much, these two guys had a lot of the same message.
Yeah, that was rather interesting, wasn't it? All right, well, that's it. I mean, that's Conspirinormal in 2020 in a nutshell. So, we actually...
What a year.
Want to talk about moving forward and 2021 and some of the things that we are going to have in store. And I guess really what we're going to just, the main thing that we're going to focus on is our Patreon. And some of the things that we're going to, and changes that we are making. So, Serfiel, do you want to take that, or?
Yeah, and I want to say also, we do have a big goal this year to do the Strange Realities Conference as a hybrid event.
Yes,
if it is possible, if we can get on the other side of this, we think combining both worlds would be the best thing to do. Would still allow everyone who couldn't make it to check it out, and then provide that physical experience too that we really did miss from 2020. From 2019, though we did have a lot of fun in 2020 still, and learned a whole lot from doing that as a streaming conference.
Yes, we did.
That's one big goal. The other big goal is to really continue to work on creating this community, and we're just putting a lot of work into this stuff. And we are making a promise to provide Patreon content every week, an episode absolutely every week if we can, with few exceptions, if anything gets out of hand. But other than that, you should expect a new Patreon episode every week as we've been delivering. And we got a new Patreon tier system that we're going to introduce. Hopefully this can be something that we can all have a lot of fun with. Create a sense of belonging and a little bit of LARPing too. Mm-hmm. So we are going to change the tier system to a $1 level, a $5 level, a $10 level, and a $20 level. That is going to be it. The new order of these are going to be, they're going to be organized into mock secret societies. So at the $1 level, these are just going to be the prospects or neophytes, and to decide if you really want to be a committed conspirinormalist. $1 is still great. You're going to have access to all the past Patron episodes, which is quite a lot already. But we are going to ask that $5 is going to be where access to new Patron episodes every week is going to start.
Yes. Okay, so how this is going to work. We basically have drawn a line at January 1st. I think that's pretty good psychically for everybody. So any Patreon episode that is going to be released after January 1st, 2021 is now going to be on the $5 tier. However, the $1 for the neophytes, if you join that way, or you stay at $1, if you're already $1, you will have access to everything before that. So everything from the end of 2016 all the way to the end of 2020, that's 4 years of shows, you have access to those Patreon episodes, of which there are a lot at this point. So just to explain that, but everything moving forward, the $5 tier is going to get those.
Yeah, and you're going to, the $1, you're going to have access to what's going on. There will be some content that you do have access to. If you want to step up to $5, you will be considered a member of the International Society of Conspirinormalists. And as a free and accepted Conspirinormalist, you'll be welcomed behind the temple doors. Will be granted access to secret additional weekly transmissions. Those are known as our Patron Episodes. And you'll also receive a pin bearing the mark of the order that you may recognize your brothers and sisters. In addition, you will receive the first part of our correspondence course that you may better understand our order and its mysteries. So you'll get a pin that'll make you a member, and you can proudly display your pin, and you'll have access to new Patreon episodes every week, as well as other content and stuff that we send you. So that is at the $5 level, International Society of Conspirinormalists, where you are going to be able to see, starting on January 1st, we're going to have a lot of cool art and symbolism for these different tier levels, so it should be something really fun. You want to go on to the next step, Adam, the $10?
The Mystic Crew, with a K. The Mystic Crew of Conspirinormal, which is to join the monthly masquerade of mirth and merriment with your hosts, the Kings of Folly, Adam and Seraphiel. In addition to our ball, you will receive the mark of our crew and additional materials that you may understand the deeper meaning behind our revelry. Each month, an invitation with a secret password required to enter the ball will be given.
So we've been having these hangouts monthly, and this is going to be for the $10 and up patrons now. And there's a Mardi Gras crew theme to this, and so we can have fun with this. You'll get your membership pins. You will be considered a part of the International Society of Conspirinormalists as well, and you'll get your pin for membership of the Mystic Crew also. And we can have fun with these hangouts, and if you want to wear masks or beads or whatever, we'll kind of have a Mardi Gras mysteries thing to it.
Mm-hmm. And at the $20 level, which we have the Ancient Circle of Strange Realities. Enter the circle and receive your exclusive garment and mark, unavailable to all but the highest Conspirinormalist initiates. You will be granted access to visions of our past yearly gatherings known as the Strange Realities Conference, as well as discounts and VIP experience in our future gatherings. All will be revealed at this final level, and you will be fully illuminated. So explain them what they get.
So if you continue to the $20 level, this is the Ancient Circle of Strange Realities that revolves around VIP access in the Strange Realities Conference. You'll receive all the previous stuff. Of course, you'll be welcome to the ball. You will receive your membership pins and communications from the other orders, but you will also get an exclusive t-shirt that we are going to reveal with the alien logo that is not available on the other shirts on TeePublic. We actually had these made exclusively for the $20 and up level members of Ancient Circle of Strange Realities. You're also going to get access to past Strange Realities conferences, so you'll be able to watch all the past conferences. And like I said, we're going to create VIP experiences for both the streaming conference and the conference itself in reality. So we'll have special experiences for you and give you special access to some of the speakers and guests at the Ancient Circle of Strange Realities, maybe have some exclusive hangouts, things like that, and you will be amongst the elect.
Yes, you will be part of the elect.
So hopefully, we're doing this to, it's nothing nefarious, but it's
right.
It's to have fun. We can provide a little bit of LARPing. A lot of it's kind of in the spirit of Subgenius and stuff like that. So, hopefully you guys dig this. As far as, the only major change is going to be the that jump between $1 and $5. I know we got a few people at the $3 level, quite a few at the $1 who are getting episodes almost every week. And if we provide an episode every single week, it's a lot of work, and we feel like we need to value that. And compared to other patron systems of other similar shows, or just most podcasts in general, $5 is basically where most of that extra content is starting, and we think that it is worth that, and we need to start showing that. So we understand, we know times are tight, but we're producing just all this content, and we have to start valuing it a little more. But with that comes also our promise to provide something every single week.
Yeah. And we're talking about just what we're going to do, and we're probably going to be doing of course, we're going to continue with guests, doing Patreon episodes with them, and we get maybe 15 to 20 minute kind of Patreon episodes. We will continue doing that, but not every guest that we can do that with, or we feel comfortable doing it with. So there's going to be, I think Serfiel and I are talking about doing maybe news updates, how we feel about certain things that are going on in the world, those type of things. You guys will have access to as well.
Yeah, and just like our own research projects.
Right. Because there's a lot of stuff that we kind of talk about privately. You guys don't hear about it, Conspirinormal. So we kind of want to make that more a little bit of more accessible to people, and to give you guys content as well.
Yeah. And as far as the monthly hangouts for the Mystic Crew and up, we are going to get those a little more spiced up, a little more thematic, and have things like special guests you will have access to, maybe people who've been on the show. We want to provide extra stuff in that. It won't just be, we all just randomly hang out, which that's fine. There'll be plenty of that, but we want to, provide something special there too, and then provide something special in the VIP experience for the conference every year.
Yes. Agreed. All right. So like Serfiel said, Strange Realities 2021. I mean, we are planning we want to do a hybrid event. Hopefully it's going to be something that we're going to get to do. I also hope to be back in Nashville at some point next year, which is only in about 3 days. Next year starts. So, hopefully things are going to start getting back on track for everybody. Things will slowly and surely get better, I think. This has been an extremely crazy year. It's been a roller coaster ride. I am proud of the fact, though, that we have kept this thing together, and that we've probably done more in this one year than oddly enough, than we have done in other years. And, Serfiel, major kudos to you, man. You really have been almost like the guiding force of the show in the last year. You've kind of kept me on my toes, and I really appreciate your help, everything that you've done.
Hey man, you're welcome, man. Thanks for letting me be a part of this. It's really changed my life, honestly. And just really looking forward to this next year. I think we're gonna, still continue to take it to the next level.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being a part of our 2020. People that have corresponded with us, and people that just love the show. Let us know what you think. There's other ways to do that. Give us a subscription on Conspirinormal Podcast on YouTube. Leave a message, or send us a message of encouragement, or leave us a good glowing review on iTunes. Those type of things really do help us, if you really love the show and the content that we give.
Thanks to everybody who listens. Thanks for sticking out another year with us. Things are getting so crazy that we really do have to express ourselves. And all the patrons, thank you, and hopefully you will be able to enjoy the new Patreon regime. And just thanks for continuing to listen to Conspirinormal.
Yes, absolutely. Guys, stay safe out there. We know things are crazy. Things are going to get crazier. And everybody keep your heads above the water. Don't believe everything that you see. Don't believe everything that you hear. Don't be swayed. Keep your level head about yourselves, because we're really gonna need that as time goes on. You and I didn't even really mention the bombing in Nashville.
Well, yeah.
But it's just the latest. It's the latest thing, and already it's being manipulated, and it's already being turned into something more than it probably actually is. So, guys, just remember, propaganda is real, and you may be getting propagandized. That's all I'm going to say.
Don't be a victim of bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, we love you very much. We'll see you in 2021 on Conspirinormal.
If you would like to help the show, please consider becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/conspirinormal, or leave a one-time donation at conspirinormal.com. And please check out our YouTube channel, Conspirinormal Podcast.